Lies of P is a Souls-like action RPG game developed by Round 8 studio of Neowiz, and I can say for sure I'm very hyped for the game, and here's why I think it will be one of the better Souls-like games in the market. First, let's talk about the combat design. I've played many so-called Souls-likes during my days, and just like many others I presume, most of them I was very underwhelmed because of clunky, boring combat designs. Well, from what I can grasp from the demo version of Lies of P, I can confidently say that Lies of P combat is much more satisfying than the most of the garbage Souls-like games in the market right now. Here's why. First and foremost, thank God I'm not constantly skating on different stages of the game. I'm here to play a dark fantasy action RPG, not a 2K speed skating or something. Lord of the Fallen 1 is a great example of how not to make movement in Souls-like games. Mobility-wise, Lies of P is pitch perfect, definitely 10 out of 10. I felt like controlling an actual character within the game, not driving a damn car. Secondly, the combat design of Lies of P is a unique yet familiar blend of elements from Software's Souls games. The slow, heavy, and punishing combat revolves around the player's usage of stamina, similar to Demon's Souls and Dark Souls. The left prosthetic arm system and perfect guard or parrying system are reminiscent of Sekiro, and the ability to interchange the two parts of the weapon fluently is similar to Bloodborne. The movement in Lies of P is very good, with responsive controls and a grounded feel. The combat is slow-paced and heavy, with a focus on guarding and parrying. If the player takes a hit while their guard is up, they'll lose a portion of their HP, but will be granted a few seconds to regain that HP by attacking enemies. This encourages players to aggressively look for parries rather than dodging. The stamina bar is also a key mechanic, as a player must manage it carefully in order to avoid being overwhelmed by enemies, which I think is a huge part of what makes a Souls experience a Souls experience. The combat in Lies of P is punishing but rewarding, and the adrenaline rush of a successful fight is palpable. While some players may find the combat too difficult, others will appreciate its challenge and depth. The game features a prosthetic arm known as the Legion arm, which is reminiscent of the prosthetic arm in Sekiro. As I have only been able to play the demo version so far, I cannot say much about the Legion arm, although from what I've seen in other videos and pictures posted by Neowiz, it appears that they'll be adding a flamethrower and a grenade launcher at the least. I'm quite enjoying the parrying system. It is responsive and satisfying to execute a clean parry, as the controller feedback is excellent. The visual effect is also pleasing, as you can break the enemy's weapon and stun them via parrying. I'm very much a fan of this system. It is also pertinent to discuss Fable Arts. They are essentially the skills from other Souls games, such as skills in Dark Souls 3. One notable feature is that Fable Arts are tied to handles and blades, so they cannot be customized freely in any sense. Additionally, in order to build a Fable Arts gauge, one must land hits on enemies, adding to the aggressive nature of the game. Finally, Lies of P features a unique weapon break-off and mix-up system. All weapons in demo version can be divided into two parts, the handle and the blade. The handle determines the attack motion and the stamina per attack, while the blade determines the base damage, element of attack, and damage reduction via guard percentage. Other features such as stats and weight will be decided between them. This system is both interesting and fun, and I plan to experiment with it extensively once the game is released. If the game provides player with a variety of interesting and balanced weapons, it will play a critical role in game's replayability. I hope the developers have prepared enough weapons for us to enjoy over and over again. The system does remind me of Bloodborne's weapon shapeshifting system, but only to a small extent. Bloodborne's weapons are essentially two versions of the same weapon, one for one-handed use and one for two-handed use. Lies of P system is more about creating your own unique weapon style, not shapeshifting in real time. However, I believe that there will be unique or legendary weapons in Lies of P that I can shapeshift and cannot be mixed and matched, which would make the game even more interesting. The combat mechanics discussed thus far are comparable to those of other Souls games. Let us now turn our attention to the game's more unique aspects. The P organs. I can't say much about this system since only the base level of the whole system has been revealed, but it seems like an additional passive and active skill system that we can enjoy. I really think the double dodge could be very useful for some people, especially people who really don't like parrying, but we're gonna have to see how effective it is against bosses later on when the actual game comes out. The weapon durability system in Lies of P is quite unforgiving. The weapon in Lies of P breaks down easier than the third dragon ring in Dark Souls 2, and if you've ever played Dark Souls 2 before, you know that ring literally breaks if you so much as trip over a rock. Therefore, a game provides you with a grinder that is apparently attached to your Legion arm from the beginning of the game, but you need to be careful not to let your weapon break mid-battle, as this will leave you vulnerable. Additionally, if your weapon durability is glowing red, you will not be able to perform charged R2 attacks. Many players find this system to be unnecessary and annoying, and I agree that it is not particularly enjoyable. However, I'm interested to see how the developers will expand upon this system in the late game. If it remains as a simple grinder without any additional features, I do think it will ultimately be a negative addition to the game. However, I'll reserve judgment until I've seen more of what the developers have in store. Overall, I think the combat design in Lies of P is far more superior than that of most of the crap Souls-like games in the market right now. Since we got all that out of the way, let's move on to the storytelling part. I reiterate that we do not yet have the full version of the game, so I must rely on conjecture for most of this. However, from what I've seen, it seems like the storytelling will be more akin to Sekiro's. In Sekiro, there are many NPCs who speak in a coherent manner, unlike the gibberish-spewing NPCs of Dark Souls.
Bearer, seek, lest this.
Sekiro represented a major departure from Software's previous Souls games in terms of game design, particularly in the storytelling department. While much of Sekiro's story was still left to the players to piece together through item descriptions and environmental storytelling, the main story beats were told through cutscenes and dialogues with NPCs. It seems that Lies of P is taking a similar approach. Unlike most Souls games, the protagonist of Lies of P is already established, Pinocchio. We have already seen several characters from the original Pinocchio story, such as Geppetto and the Blue Fairy, who speak like rational beings for the most part. While there is still room for environmental storytelling to fill in the gaps, I personally believe that the game will feature a Lovecraftian setting. Why? Let me show you why. You can find a sitting corpse around this alley here. It's pretty obvious that it's not just any dead body. It's been infected by something, some kind of disease it seems like, a disease that turns people into this otherworldly abomination. It's full of aquamarine-ish color liquid spilling out of everywhere. It's clearly been placed at a location where most players would definitely find, designed to probably show players a glimpse of what's to come, giving off that ominous feeling. Okay, I know this only would not convince you guys into my Lovecraftian theory, but let me show you something else. Hidden Moonstone is the enhancement material in Lies of P that can upgrade common weapon blades up to +3. It reads the Moonstone was not from this world, however it was the most optimal enhancement material. In their urgency, technicians pushed forward with using the Moonstone for weapon upgrades without time to review it any further. Not from this world, Without time to review it any further. Ring any bells? The blood transfusions in Yharnam, maybe? Finally, inside the house near the massive puppet, you can find the frozen man's letter on the sofa. It is a letter to his family in which he describes the dire situation in Krat. The second page of the letter contains a particularly interesting passage. The best thing I did when I was alive was send you and Charlotte to the cathedral for shelter. It is curious that the developers of Liza P chose to include Cathedral in their Belle Epoque steampunk world full of automated puppets and machines at the peak of technology. The cathedral obviously is a symbol of religion, which seems a bit out of place in this otherwise secular setting. It is possible that the cathedral is intended to provide shelter from the dangers of this world, but it is also possible that it has more sinister purpose. The cathedral's eeriness is reminiscent of the settings of games such as BioShock Infinite and Bloodborne, which suggests that it may be a place of dark secrets. I believe that the cathedral will play an important role in the game's story, and that it may be the key to understanding the game's possible Lovecraftian-inspired setting. If you're a fan of dark and atmospheric games, I recommend keeping an eye on Liza P. Now let's move on to some other features of the game. Liza P was highly inspired by different Souls games created by From Software, and a lot of the features are reminiscent of them. What I like about Liza P in particular is that they already brought in a lot of familiar features that take a significant part of Souls experience and made it more convenient. Here's what I mean. The currency Souls in Liza P is called Ergo.
Gather ergo, clever one. This stargazer will make you stronger.
We can pick up various Ergo fragments inside Krot, and I'm assuming if you've ever played any Souls game before, you'd immediately know what this is even before reading the description. However, unlike actual Souls, these fragments actually tell you how much Ergo will give you once you use them, and amazingly, when you talk to Sophia so you can spend your Ergo to level up, it shows how much Ergo via fragments you have in both your current inventory and the storage without calculating the boss Ergos. Hell, the game even indicates when you have enough Ergos to level up. This is innovation, let me tell you. This is some crazy stuff. I was also mesmerized by the beauty of the map design in the demo version. It reminded me so much of the map design in Demon's Souls, which is classic. In addition to map itself, the game did a great job of hinting at puppets' weakness to electricity. Just look at all the hints they throw at you.
The puppets get fried easily by electricity. If you use an electric Legion arm, it'll make your life easier.
Plus the coil stick that you can buy, and even the visual effects. The puppets do not seem to enjoy being hit with the coil stick, do they? This was all subtly designed by the developers so that the players who would actually notice something would have that feeling of achievement by figuring the game out. I expect to see more of these map and level design in later games as well. Have you also noticed these little details on P's humanity? If you wear the uniform Antonia gives you and use the gesture, show off clothes in front of her,
Forgive me, I'm rambling. When you get to my age, your memories are like good friends. And just as distracting.
P springs react the same way they do whenever you lie. The concept is that lying brings P closer and closer to an actual human being since other puppets cannot lie, but it's really curious why this particular action brought him closer to humanity. These type of hidden details are always appreciated. Finally, Liza P is very well optimized. It runs smoothly like a top quality silk, which is a major advantage in today's gaming landscape. It is also very well optimized for keyboard and mouse users. From Software games are generally difficult to play on keyboard and mouse, with Sekiro being the exception. However, Liza P takes into account the needs of keyboard and mouse users, which is commendable. That concludes the video. I've shared my reasons for believing that Liza P will be a great Souls-like game in the market. I do have some concerns about the game, such as whether there will be more enemy types in the late game besides just same enemies with different colors. However, I am personally very excited for this game. Thank you for watching this video. Please leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you have enjoyed it, and as always, I hope to see you all again very soon.